just an introduction to myself. So, hi everybody, my name's Elise, and essentially I look after the relationship between your university and S&P. So basically that means that any kind of questions you guys have or any kind of training requests, I kind of look after those. So today we'll be looking at the Capital IQ platform. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to kind of have a look around, see what it's about. But just as a bit of background, it's essentially just kind of like a data, like a desktop data set where you can find lots of information on things like companies, transactions, fixed income, things like that really. So today we'll just be having quite a quick overview of the platform as a whole. I won't go into anything in too much detail, just because we've got lots to cover. But of course, if you've got any questions, then you can always come to me after, and also stop me if you've got any questions along the way. Perfect. So first things first, when you log in, this is what you'll see. So this is what's known as the dashboard, which is quite nicely labelled there. And what this is essentially a monitoring tool. So we have a few monitoring tools on the platform. These are good for people that are looking at specific portfolios that they're keeping up to date with, and then that way they can see, like I've got labelled out here, any kind of key developments, quite a nice market overview of a particular kind of area, and things like that. So this page itself is customizable, and these individual kind of sections, obviously I've got the key developments like I mentioned. You can add that yourself by clicking on this add widgets button at the bottom. There's only over 50 here, and I'm sure you'll be able to kind of navigate and find the ones that are most relevant for you. So you can keep up to date with things like news and events, global markets, any kind of financials or filings that are being released, things like that. And you can kind of go through and customize that for yourself. So that's the dashboard. Again, this is just one of a few monitoring tools that we have. So the others are found under this My Capital IQ tab. And if just under here, we can see this option at the bottom for watch lists. So if I just click on create watch list, I just give it a name. Perfect. This is essentially the page where you can kind of create a watch list. So a watch list is basically, again, like a list of companies that you're interested in. Could be a portfolio of companies that you're keeping up to date with. And this is transferable throughout the platform. So you can use this in Excel, you can use this in screening, whatever it might be. So it's just a nice way to kind of stay up to date with particular companies that you're interested in. It doesn't actually necessarily have to be companies. It could also be geographies, indices, industries, things like that, that's listed out there. But generally it's most widely used for companies. So you can add that there. Once you've done that, all you have to do is kind of hit save, and that will be available for you to kind of use in other places and other tools on the platform. So from here, again, we can come back to the My Capital IQ, which is where we can find the last monitoring tool, which is alerts. So just under alerts, you can see the option here to create alert. Again, just letting that load for a second. And alerts is essentially, it does what it says on the tin really. So it just keeps you up to date with any kind of information that you're looking to keep up to date with. So at the bottom there, you've kind of got the options available. So any kind of key developments, any filings, transcripts, stock prices, movers, things like that. And then again, at the top, we've kind of got the admin kind of side of things. So you can give it a name. You can receive this through email or an in-app alert, which allows you to kind of see your alerts over here. But obviously, if you're choosing email alert, you need to add a subject. You can also choose a delivery time, so real time or digest. So real time is as and when it comes in. there's up to a 15-minute delay just for processing. And if you select digest, you can select a specific day or time that you want to keep up to date, just because there can be a lot of noise if you select real time and you're looking at quite a broad scope of things as well. You can add any kind of email recipients. You're set as default, so you don't need to add yourself, but you can also keep up to date. So for example, there's a group of you that are working on a project, you can add all of yourselves together, and that's up to 10 people. So that's just something to be wary of. Like I mentioned at the bottom here, we've got key development. So if I just expand this option, you can kind of see what's kept within the folders. So we've got the filter for specific categories and then also type. So you can be quite granular in order to kind of navigate through all the additional noise that you might get. So just kind of selecting one of these options, for example, dividends and split, you could move that across and then scroll down and find, I don't know, dividend decreases, increases, whatever it might be. So you can be quite granular with this. That's just something to kind of be aware of as well. Once you've done that, just hit save and that will start filtering through to you as and when it comes in. So that's the kind of monitoring tools that we have available. In terms of the corporate profiles, so I'm just going to select Microsoft as an example. We use this top search bar like any kind of search bar. If you're looking for a particular company, you can search that there. If you were looking at an index, you could also search that too. But just obviously Microsoft's a company, so we can just select that first one there. If you're aware of the ticker, you can also search by ticker. Give that a second to load. So at the top here, or the page that's loaded, it's what's known as a tier sheet. So it gives us like a basic overview of the company as a whole. It gives us things like business description, the year they were founded, basic market information, things like that. So nothing too detailed there. At the top here, we've got the type of company that it is. So if you were looking at a public company, it would say that there as well. And obviously, you'd get slightly different data sets depending on the type of company too. But just coming to this left-hand panel here, so this kind of looks like an index on a book that you might get. But this is where you'd find all of the more detailed data sets here as well. So one of the main things obviously is the financials. So you can see here under financials, we've got some of the fundamentals that you might be familiar with. And if I just open one of these as an example, so the balance sheet, give that a second to load, this is essentially what it looks like. So at the top here, we've got some options for you to kind of be a bit more narrower in terms of what you're looking at. So you could choose a specific period type if you wanted to look at quarters instead of annual. You can also look at like last 12 months, whatever it might be. You can also change a currency if you was looking for a particular currency, or just leave it as reported, whatever suits you best. And then there's some other options there as well. We've also got this sliding scale. So obviously at the moment, this is for 2022. And we can move this across so that you can view more data at once. Obviously, that's quite a bit of data. You can also move this whole thing as well if you wanted to look at particular date range too. So just looking at this as an example, just scrolling down here, you can see these values that are in blue. So those are actually auditable. So if we click on one of these as an example, so the total current assets in 2014, it will open up a pop-up box and it will kind of give you the calculation behind that particular metric. So again, just hovering over that, you can be even more kind of granular in terms of what you're looking at. But with these even further blue hyperlink values, we can trace this all the way back to the source document. So just clicking on that there, this will open the source document for this particular value. So you can see here 77074 in 2014 is listed here in the 10K. So just closing that there. Of course, that's the financials. So just scrolling down here, we've also got the estimates, which is quite nice just to look at forward-looking things. Give that a second to load. Here you can see kind of recommendation for selling and buying. Obviously at the moment they're outperforming, so it would be buy. But it's just kind of like recommendations from brokers. Again, scrolling down, you can kind of see those key metrics listed out again. And by clicking on these as well, again, with everything that's blue hyperlinked, you can kind of see which brokers have kind of given their recommendation or submitted their estimates. So just by hovering over the consensus mean, for example, you can see here that we're looking at consolidated and US GAAP, and then also the types of contributors below. Sorry, like I was saying, in entitlement needed, it just means that you need to have a relationship in order to view the broker's estimates. You will be able to see the value. So there, for example, you can see we've got 98,907 for this particular broker, but you just can't see who exactly that broker is. So you can request this, but this goes back to the broker. They have to approve it, things like that. And the thing is, it's still included in the estimate as a whole. So it's only really if you want to know exactly who's provided that estimate. Again, you can kind of hover over these and you can kind of see how their estimates changed over time, and any kind of movements in that, dates, things like that. You can even see the analyst, so you know who to reach out to if you've got any questions on that as well. So that's the estimates. So the thing is with these E's and A's, so E's obviously stands for estimates, A stands for actual, because those values are being released. This is an actual now. So that's just something to bear in mind as well. So just scrolling down, we've got them split into calendar years and quarters, so whatever kind of suits you best as well. So that is the estimates. So under peer analysis, this is quite a popular tool, to be honest. So under quick comps, essentially what this is a list of 10 companies that have kind of been drawn together by the CIQ algorithm. So they're behind that, we can't necessarily see exactly what the algorithm is, but it includes things like financials, analyst coverage, industry, location, things like that. So obviously for Microsoft, this is what's been pulled. This is customizable. So again, you can kind of say, for example, you don't necessarily agree with Amazon, you can select Amazon, hit options and delete that option. You could also add your own companies if you wanted to, and also kind of change these display columns across the top by clicking add/edit display columns. So you can be fairly specific in terms of what you want to actually see. And again, with these tabs, just kind of going through these, you can see different kind of metrics as well. So at the bottom, we've also got the statistics. So just like high, low, mean, average, things like that. So that's just something that you also have available to you as well. Just scrolling down a bit further, we've got fixed incomes and transactions. They're a fairly similar view. I will just open the transactions page just because it's generally got a bit more information. Here we can see kind of the types of transactions that have been have taken place for this particular company. If we click on this customized view, you can kind of minimize the types of deals that you want to look at. So say you wanted to only look at mergers or any buybacks, whatever you want, you can kind of minimize that there. And just scrolling down here, we've obviously got quite a nice list of the transactions that have taken place. So you can click, okay, so again, like I said, with these transactions, if we just click on these dates, you'll be able to get a bit more information in terms of what's actually behind them. So if I click on this value here, so generally everything that's blue hyperlinked, obviously like it would with any other hyperlink, you can kind of link to another page. Generally, it will give you a bit more detail, or it might take you to the company's profile, but that's just something to be aware of. So by clicking on the date of this particular transaction, it will take us to a more detailed page and we can see a bit more information on that particular transaction. So here we've got like the status, the type of transaction, any kind of, obviously we've got the buyer company, target company, a synopsis of that particular transaction, advisors, and then any kind of values that relate to the transaction as well. There's clearly quite a fair bit of information on this transaction, but that's just kind of an example of the detail that you can get as well. So just scrolling down here, obviously there's a lot of data sets within a company profile. So we've got any kind of investments that they're interested in, also any research pieces, news, investors, kind of ownership types as well. That's generally quite a nice page. If I just open that for the time being, so public ownership, for example, give that a second to load. To be fair, I don't think going back was the best option. There is me. Yeah, so just coming to ownership. So I'll just click on public ownership. Obviously, this gives us information about shareholders. So you can see here at the top, we've got the type of owners that are included. So we've got institutions, corporations, individuals. Obviously, this is just a summary page, but we can also get a more detailed view again by clicking on those blue hyperlinked values. So just below here, we've got institutional owners, top holders of that particular companies, top holders of this particular company, sorry, activist investors, things like that. We've also got the top buyers and sellers at the bottom as well. There's quite a few nice visualizations as well, so you can hover over those and kind of see exactly the percentages behind them, rather than kind of looking in this table format as well. So if I just click into institutions as an example, we should be able to kind of see a bit more of a detailed list behind what is being held by who. Obviously, Vanguard holds the most here, and this is the amount of stock that they're holding. We've also got the market value, change in shares position, things like this, the source where that data's come from, funds as well. So you can get a fair amount of information, to be honest, just by kind of clicking through the different data sets and navigating through the pages as well. So that is just kind of a very quick overview of the data sets that we've got. Is there anything in particular that anyone wanted to cover, or is it just quite broad?
I think we just wanted a real broad overview of kind of everything that you could do on the platform, just so people could kind of get an idea. That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I'll leave that there then. Of course, there's obviously quite a bit more data within these data sets. So I'll leave that for the time being, and I'll just kind of head through some of the tools that we've got as well that are really quite useful. So the next thing would probably be the screening tool. It's probably the second most popular tool that we have, for the Excel plugin. And if I just open a company screen, for example, we can kind of get a better idea of what this includes. So the screening tool essentially navigates through all of the data that we have on the platform. It's a very, very powerful tool, and it's quite robust. If I'm honest, it's been around for a very long time, I think even longer than me. So it houses essentially all of the data that we have. But that does also mean that you need to be quite patient with it, because it's filtering through so much information, and it can take its time sometimes. But just essentially what this allows us to do is kind of build a report that suits exactly what we're looking for. So for example, if I was looking for companies that are operating in a specific industry, in a specific geographic location, I could pull that through this kind of tool. So this way I could build out a list of peers, or if I was a PE firm, I could build out companies that I'd be potentially interested in investing into, things like that. So it's essentially a genuinely really quite comprehensive tool. Obviously at the top there's some different types of screens, so you can screen for companies, like I'll show as an example now. You can also screen for fixed income, We can also screen for key developments. Transactions is another popular one, especially for like M&A analysts, things like that. But I'll just build out a very basic screen as an example. So I'm just going to select the United Kingdom, just because obviously that's where we are. But just kind of navigating through these drop downs, you can find the company that you're interested in. Click add criteria, and now we should be able to kind of pull all of the companies, because this is a company screen, that falls within the area. So obviously this is greater than 1 million, and when you have greater than 1 million, it's just too big for the tool to kind of pull down, so you have to start with more niche areas. So we don't necessarily have to delete this and start again. What you can do is add an industry classification and then navigate through it that way. So just because I was already on Microsoft, I'm going to go with information technology. Again, we can kind of go through this and be as niche as you want, just to kind of show you an example. Under software, system software, you can go through these as much as you like. Honestly, it goes really quite deep into specific industries as well. So if I just select, I don't know, software research for the time being, this will now replace that first option, and it will pull as many companies that fall within that remit. And then now it will add a different, like another level. So obviously now it's looking at the geographic location, which is United Kingdom. And this is the amount of companies that kind of fall within that remit. So now obviously 85 is a much more manageable list than over 1 million. So now if we click view results, we should be able to see the report there in a bit more detail. Obviously, this is a very basic report. We've only literally minimized by geographic location and industry, but you can add as many criteria as you want. You could add, for example, companies that have IPO'd in the last 3 years, or you could add specific financials, those that have an EBITDA above 10 million, whatever it might be, you could minimize by those as well. But say, for example, we wanted those values, but we didn't necessarily want to minimize the results by them. We could click add/edit display columns, click browse all display columns, and it will bring us back to this page. So obviously this looks really quite familiar to what we've already seen. And if I click on financial statements now, give that a second to load. Generally, this takes the longest to run, obviously, because there are so many numbers within the statements. So may not have been the best option for me to choose, but we'll give it a second to load. Like I say, you just have to be a bit patient with it sometimes. Perfect. So just kind of expanding these brackets here. So balance sheet, income statement, any key financials. So for example, we could add market cap, and we could look as of latest. We could add the date range, so the last 3 years, for example. So that will pull the market cap for the last 3 years. Click add column, and now you'll be able to see those listed out there. If I now click view results, we haven't necessarily minimized our results based on the display columns that I've added. This is just additional information that we want to view as well. So obviously you can see here the majority of these are private, so they won't have market cap, but this one that does. You can see the values listed out here again, and because that's blue hyperlinked, you can trace that back and audit that as well. So just going through this again with the aggregates, here we've got some quite nice statistics, so average, minimum, maximum, standard deviation even, and market cap average weighted, things like that. Obviously there's not much there because it's a private company. But so that's kind of the aggregates. We also have the option for where is my company. So if, for example, you're sure that Microsoft should be included, but you're just not seeing it there, you can double check why that would be by kind of searching here, clicking on Microsoft, click search. To be fair, let me try again. Microsoft, perfect. You can see there it fails on geographic location. It also fails on the industry classification as well. But that's the reason why it's not been included in our list here. So it kind of gives you a bit of reasoning behind why you're not seeing exactly what you thought you would as well. So you can group these results too. So you can group them by sector, geographic region, if you're looking at multiple, company type, exchange, whatever it might be, you can kind of go through and group those too. You can also export this into Word or Excel, so that way you can kind of reference it and do any kind of additional work that you're interested in Excel or Word. So that's just something that you have available too. So that's a screening tool. Like I say, you can do this for fixed income, transactions, whatever it might be that you're interested in. This is just a very brief and quick example of the things that you can kind of pull within the tool. So that's the screening tool. The next thing that I'll come to is charting. So charting obviously gives us some quite nice visualizations in terms of just referencing them in reports, whatever it might be. You can kind of build out your own chart by using the chart builder. So first and foremost, obviously, like I mentioned with the lists, you can pull lists into screening. You can also pull them into charts. So if you're looking at a few particular companies, you could add your list there. Any kind of indices you can chart, interest rates, whatever it might be, you can kind of go through and add that there. Again, just sticking with companies, I'm just going to stick to Microsoft. And then you can kind of add any metrics that you're interested in. Obviously, these are the ones that are most common. But if you're looking at specific metrics, for example, you can click on the binoculars and this will give you more advanced options as well. So you can kind of go through and add whatever one might be interesting to you. But I'll just click on share pricing for the time being. And now you can see we've kind of got this squiggly line. That's quite interesting in terms of kind of going through and hovering over and seeing the values as well. You can change the date range at the top, so you could select the max. If that seconds load, again, this is a lot of data, so sometimes you do have to be a bit patient with it, but obviously this is as far back as the data we have in terms of share pricing for Microsoft, so 1988, sorry. So what we can do as well, we can click on compare and you can add another entity. So say, for example, we wanted to look at Apple. You could even add an indice, whatever it might be. Click add, and then you can kind of chart those against each other. Second to load. And here you can kind of see what's been happening between those two companies over time. Just scrolling down as well, you can see exactly what's been included there too. So just something to bear in mind, if you right click here, we've got some other options as well. So you can replace the metric, replace the entity, look at study. So we can do some trend analysis. We've got technical analysis as well, whatever might be kind of relevant in terms of what you're looking at. We've also got benchmarks. So if you, for example, wanted to look at S&P 500, could add that in as well, just to see the kind of change over time. Again, this is a lot of data, so you have to be a bit patient with it. But hopefully shouldn't take too much longer. Fingers crossed. Perfect. So you can kind of see that there. So this is just in comparison to the S&P 500 as well now. So that is kind of the chart builder. You can again export this into Excel if you wanted to. You could save this and come back to it at a later date, and also open the chart into another file as well. So that's a chart builder. So the other thing that we have as well under the markets tab is coming away from the tools now is the markets tab. So here we can get quite a nice industry overview. We can also get like a macroeconomic overview, and we've also got the commodities data too. So I'll just show you the market overview, the industry overview, sorry, just by clicking on this industries title. And this should load up an industry profile as a whole. So just by clicking on refine industry, of course, you can go through and refine industry or geography, selecting IT, for example, clicking submit, now this should update for us. Now we're looking at potential red flags, ratings. Obviously, I have the ratings available to me, so that's also included. Transactions, filings, reports, whatever it might be. This is just kind of quite a nice general overview as a market as a whole for that particular industry. The other thing that's really quite interesting as well is the key stats and ratios. So again, kind of navigating to that left-hand panel to get more of a detailed overview of what's exactly taking place within that industry that you're looking at. You can see here we've got some quite nice multiples, some profitability ratios, things like that. And this is an aggregation for this particular industry. So it's looking at all of the companies that are being held within this industry. So obviously the count is the number of companies that fall within that remit that we have information on that kind of is included in these metrics. Just something to bear in mind. This is only for public entities. It does not include private. So that's just something to be aware of as well. Again, like we've already seen, we've also got transactions for the industry as a whole. So it would just be a list, same as what we'd seen previously, a list for the particular industry that we're looking at, and you can kind of go through, navigate them similarly as you would on a corporate profile as well. So that is really quite a brief overview of the markets tab. We do have obviously the macroeconomic data as well. So if you wanted to look at GDP, for example, you could go through it this way. So you can kind of navigate through these on more of a specific level. So what you need to do is click on the browse tree option, and here we've got some basic indicators. So for the global forecast, or global historical, or the US, just go on historical. Obviously you can navigate through these and find the one that's most relevant to you, but because I mentioned GDP, I'll stick to GDP. I'm just going to choose the year-on-year growth for, let's go with, where's the UK? Let's go with the US just because it saves a lot of scrolling here. And this will bring up quite a nice chart in terms of the growth for this particular country in terms of the metric that we've selected there. So you've got a bit more detail as well in terms of how that's changed at the bottom. So kind of like the raw data below the chart itself. So again, you can kind of go through, customize the time frame. We're looking at 5 years. You could do the maximum, 10 years, whatever you want to. You can kind of go through and change that as well. And you can do that for all of the metrics that are within that browse tree option that we'd seen a second ago as well. So that is very, very brief overview of the markets tab. So within that, you've got industry data, macroeconomic data, and also commodities. I don't know if that's necessarily of interest to any of you, but that is just where it's kept as well. So you can kind of navigate through that when you get some spare time. Also interest rates too. So obviously we've got 20 minutes left. I just wondered if anyone had any questions on this, or we could head over to the Excel plugin if that's of interest to anyone, and we can take a look at that. Just feel free.
Yeah, I think that would be really useful if you can quickly go over that. That would be lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So let me just see. Perfect. So with the Excel plugin, it's probably the most powerful tool that we have. It allows you to kind of pull data across from the platform into Excel. So it saves you a lot of time in terms of building it out, just copying and pasting the values across. Here you can obviously see I've built out a very, very basic template. But once you've downloaded the Excel plugin, you should be able to see this option at the top here for S&P Capital IQ. And what we can do is essentially navigate to the formula builder. So the formula builder allows us to kind of build out those formulas that pull the data across from the platform. So if we just right click now into the cell that you want the values to be in and click insert formula, this should now open the formula builder here. The first things first, we need to reference the ID. So if you know the ticker, you can obviously select identify and put that in yourself, or we can reference the cell, and this way we can kind of keep it dynamic. And it just saves us a bit of time a bit further down the line. So we want to lock that just because later on when we drag this across for 2019, we don't need to repeat the same steps, but you'll see that in a second. So now just kind of navigating to the metrics. Obviously, they're all kept under financials, just for these ones here. So under income statement, we've got total revenue. Total revenue, and just by hovering over that, you get quite a nice description of what that is as well. And then now we can kind of reference these periods. So we want to lock the row rather than the column. There we go. So just putting a $sign in front of the 6 there. You can reference an as of date, a currency, whatever it might be. So again, with the currency, just selecting that there. F4, locking that all in. And then once you're happy with it, you can click add formula, and you can list out as many formulas as you like there. Saves you from going back and forward as well. So just scrolling down here, we should now be able to get to EBITDA. And because we've already kind of added all of this here, just referencing the as of date in this cell here, again, locking that, adding the formula, we can kind of see now we're building out that list just below. The next one is total debt. Obviously, there's a lot of metrics within this, so you can also use the search function just to save yourself a bit of time as well. Select that metric, add it, and then the last one is net income, and then add that as well. So once you're happy with all the ones that you've added, you can hit OK. Let me just make sure that we're in the right cell. C8, perfect. Click OK. Give that a second to load. Perfect. So now you can kind of see all the values that have been drawn across from the platform. And because we've referenced this and kept it dynamic, locked those cells, we should now be able to drag this across and see that we're now referencing this cell here rather than still referencing 2021. So it's fairly straightforward in terms of the formula builder. Obviously, this is a very basic kind of model, but that's essentially how you'd use the formula builder. The other thing that we have available is templates. So depending on the type of work that you're kind of doing, you might save yourself kind of the aggro of building out your own templates. You could just kind of navigate to here and find the one that's most relevant for you. So come into that top banner, clicking on templates and click get/update templates. Give that a second to load. Here you can kind of see all of the templates that we have available. I believe there's only over 500, so I'm sure there'll be one that's kind of relevant to what you're looking for. But you can kind of go through these, select the one that's relevant for you, click download, and then that will now be available in our drop down as well. So if I just close that here, you should now be able to see under equity comparables, I've downloaded the company comparable analysis. And if I just open that up, give that a second to load. Here we can see an example of this template. So everything that's in blue is an input, so we can change the ticker, for example, if I wanted to change it to Apple or Microsoft, whatever it might be. Click update workbook, or it just does it itself sometimes. You can see now we're pulling the comps for Apple instead of IBM. So you can also go through, change the currency, change the date, whatever it might be, and then this will filter through to the rest of the tabs. So we've got here kind of some basic metrics, so last sale price, market cap, TV, things like that. Financial data, trading multiples, operating statistics. It's fairly similar to what we've seen on Quick Comps. It's just basically being pulled into Excel. So it's just something to bear in mind that all of the inputs are in blue. So everything that you can change is in blue. And yeah, so that's the templates. The very last thing I'll mention before I just ask if there's any questions, so we can have like 15 minutes of questions, is under this, on the platform here, under the help section, contact us, is the client services team. So if you've got any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to them. They're available 24/7, 365 days of the year. So they're always there. Even if you're working on an assignment on a Sunday night at 10 o'clock at night, there'll be someone there that's available to help you. You can email them using these top options. You can call them or chat support. And that's just something that you have available to you as well. We also have the help section. If I just open that up quickly, give that a second to load. Here you can kind of find some quite nice user guides in terms of the different tools on the platform. So we've got the Office plugin, we've got the screening tool, we've got, like I mentioned, the user guides as well. So under here, you'd be able to find a quick reference guide for CIQ. You can kind of navigate through this and get some more detailed information on the CIQ plugin as well. You can even search at the top for particular things. So for example, if you wanted to screen country, or screen geographic industries of interest in foreign buyers and screening, so you can be quite specific in terms of what you want to look at. That will generate a report, and it kind of walks you through how you'd be able to do that as well. So it's just something else that you have in terms of the help section, just so you're aware as well. So I'll leave it there. Obviously, that was very, very quick, I'm aware. If you've got any questions, feel free to let me know. I'm more than happy to help.